Welcome, everyone, to the 23rd episode of the Open Throne Podcast. I'm your host, Cole Houck. Today, joined once again by Tom and Rob Hope of the Sports Guyz. How you guys feeling today?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having us on again. We're really excited to talk about college football. Here we go.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting us on. College football starts this week. We are at week 0. Let's go.
I know. We are recording this on Tuesday, so we are, 3-4 days away from week 0 starting?
Yeah.
I'm so excited. You got the UNC-TCU game that's going to be in Ireland this year. They're doing that again. We are going to the UVA-NC State game as well. You guys are both UVA guys. Obviously, I'm in NC State. I got the shirt on here, so really excited to see how that goes. It's probably going to be a coin flip. It could go either way. I'm just really excited to see the MSV here and really get college football kicked off.
Totally agree. It's going to be so much fun, and really glad you're going with us. We get to show you our college town, so that's going to be really a blast.
We're going to do breaking down every conference here, breaking it one episode at a time as well. First, we're going to go over the SEC. So SEC was a little bit weird last year when you guys say they had 4 teams go 7-1 in the conference. And they actually got 5 teams in the playoffs. We were just talking about that far and away more than anybody else. I think the Big Ten got 2 teams. Everybody else got 2 or 1 or less. And then while researching this next year, I had a hard time figuring out what team was going to stand out besides one team. We'll get into that, but through the first 8 teams that I looked into based on how they did last year, I had 6 teams that could go 8-4 or 9-3. I mean, there are so many teams that are in that tier where it's just kind of borderline in the playoffs because of how difficult the SEC schedule is, moving to 9 conference games. There's a lot of middle, and everybody's going to beat up on each other, and I'm really excited to see how it's going to turn out. What do you guys think?
I agree with that. I think that in all these conferences we're going to be reviewing with you on the Open Throne podcast, we can really put everybody into kind of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So that's the way I really think of it. And I think of the SEC this year as kind of, Georgia is tier 1, maybe by itself. And then tier 2, you've got a lot of teams that could go 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. You've got, the Ole Misses of the world, and you got A&M, and you got Alabama, and you got all these different teams that are really good, but will be kind of right on the fringe of playoff or no playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think Georgia's atop the SEC by itself. I think there are a number of teams that are just as good. I don't think anybody argues against that the SEC is the deepest conference. Some people say, well, what does that matter? If you're top heavy and you're better, who cares how bad your bottom is? The reason it matters is because those are the teams that you have to beat to get in. So it's much harder to get in from the SEC. So the argument that it doesn't matter that the bottom half of the SEC is way harder than anyone else's is irrelevant. It's very relevant because now they're forced to play an extra game against teams like Florida that aren't competing for national titles, but they can beat everyone. So it is interesting, the SEC deciding we haven't won in 3 years. Let's make it even harder by adding a ninth conference game.
Yeah.
And ACC did the same thing, and a lot of the big conferences are doing that. And the reason is they want to control the TV revenue within their conference as well. So there's a financial reason for it. Well, who do you guys have as the top, let's say, 3 teams in the SEC this year?
Yeah, I'll do one a little bit differently. I broke this down into 5 tiers, and a lot of this is based on what I think the record is going to be, as well as what I think their conference record is going to be. And the tiers aren't necessarily that I think these teams are, if they're in the same tier, they're not necessarily the same talent-wise. I just think that I couldn't get them to group them up with the other teams, or their conference record is slightly different, so I had to draw the line somewhere. What I did was I have the King of the Hill. This is for SEC specifically, because none of the other conferences are going to have this many playoff contenders and not quite playoff teams, I promise you. SEC has King of the Hill as tier 1, and then tier 2, I have playoff contenders, teams that I expect either make the playoffs or be really close to it. Tier 3 is not quite playoff teams. Then I have a round bowl eligibility, so that'd be teams that go 6-6 or 4-8, 5-7 that were 1 or 2 really tough games away. And if you ask them to play in a bowl game, they could probably still beat out a group of 6 team if they go 5-7, like Mississippi State did last year. And then bottom feeders / doormat. There's a couple of doormats and bottom feeders of every conference as well. So instead of 3, I actually only have 1 team as the top in the King of the Hill, and that would be Georgia. And I know, Rob, you said you thought there was a couple of teams that belong in the same conversation as Georgia. Who do you think those are?
I think Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma, but Oklahoma's schedule's so hard that I move them down. But not if you line them up talent-wise, I think Oklahoma's right there with them. But their schedule is brutal. They're second in the country. Texas is third. in the country. So it's very possible that Oklahoma and Texas just get eliminated because of how hard their schedule is. But I think if you line up talent-wise, they're all comparable.
I'm with Cole on this. I think there's only one team in the top tier, and that's Georgia. And the reason I say that is because Texas 3 times in a row has gone to Georgia. In 2 of those 3 matchups, they were higher rated and lost all 3 games. There's something about Georgia. Georgia has Texas's number. So I've got Georgia number 1, and I've got, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma, those 4 sitting in that second tier. All of them
Gotcha.
probably going to go to the playoff.
I think the light went on for Manning second half of last year, and I think it's on for good now.
That's all very fair, and I thought that not too long ago. I have a hot take about Texas that I'll get down to here in a little bit because they have one thing that I found. I had an epiphany while looking into last year that I can't quite let go of, despite them looking a lot better than last season. I'll get to that in a couple minutes, though. So, a couple things about Georgia. One, you guys know Kirby Smart. He's won at least 2 national champions, maybe 3 in the early 2020s. Obviously, you said hadn't won since 2022, but they're consistently right there with the top dogs, no pun intended. They have Gunnar Stockton coming back. He's going to be really good. They return Nate Frazier as well as their other 2 best running backs, too. So they're going to be really solid. They did lose their top 2 wide receivers, and they're going to have to rely on young talent. But Georgia is one of those programs where I just have to put a lot of faith in young talent being able to take the next step in line with people. If they didn't think they would have been able to get the best transfers in the world because they're Georgia. So the reason they didn't go get transfers, I believe they believe in the development of those wide receivers coming in, the younger guys who haven't got a ton of experience. They also, this is pretty interesting to find out, they had a league best 6 preseason all SEC selections on defense, which is just, I think there's only 2 teams of those as well. So to have 6 of those in one program, especially in a conference as stacked defensively as SEC is, really speaks volumes to me. And I think they sneakily might be the best defense in the country. They also have a pretty manageable schedule, as far as SEC goes. So I could only see them going 10-2 or 11-1. I think 10-2 genuinely is their floor.
And I agree with Rob that Manning's going to have a fantastic year, much better than last year. I think he's going to have a very splashy year. He's going to be in the Heisman conversation. All those things are true. I mean, Texas may even go, 9-0 to start the year, something like that, if they can win a couple tough games early on. But what I will say is, would you take Steve Sarkisian and his staff, or would you take Kirby Smart and his staff? And I know for me, it's Kirby Smart and his staff. I think that's going to make the difference. Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I like Kirby Smart slightly more than Sarkisian. I think they're all top 5 guys, though. I mean, those are great programs. I think what they both do is very impressive. I love the way Kirby Smart does his defenses. I love the way Sarkisian does his offenses. They're kind of mirror images of each other. They're extremely loaded. The big advantage for Georgia is not coaching, it's not quarterback, it's not this, that, or the other thing. It's their schedule. It's not even close. They have one of the easiest schedules in the SEC. It's not number 1 easiest, but it's close. And they have, 14 returning starters. I'm a big fan of Gunnar Stockton. I think he and Arch are pretty comparable in my book, actually. So I think that Georgia and Texas are right there neck and neck. But there were a couple things about last year that were a little disturbing with Georgia. They had 8 games where they were behind in the fourth quarter, and they won 7 of them. And I think that speaks well to the makeup of the mental side of the team. However, they're not blowing people out like Indiana was. They don't have that domination factor. So while I always love Kirby Smart's defenses, and I usually love Georgia's offenses pretty well, they have some weaknesses. I mean,
They do.
their receiver room has been weak for years and is not going to be much better now. Their pass rush isn't what we're accustomed to with Georgia teams. Half the NFL defensive linemen are Georgia. They only had 20 sacks last year total. So there are some concerning spots on this team. I don't think they're the best team in the SEC, but they're really close. But I think they have a couple of spots I would attack if I was playing them. And I think you're in for a long day against a defense that maybe their defensive line isn't quite what it used to be a few years ago, but it's still going to be Georgia.
I would say also Georgia last year, one of their biggest weaknesses was they didn't run the ball like Georgia last year.
Yeah.
And this year they brought in 2 5-star running backs. So I think they're going to solve that issue pretty easily. But I agree with you, Rob. I think that the defensive front seven is not what it used to be either. So I agree with you. Georgia does have some weaknesses, but I still think they're the best team. And I put Texas number 2.
I'm a big fan of Stockton. 2,900 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 picks, 462 yards rushing, and 10 TDs rushing. I mean, dual threat, smart, protects the ball. As long
I
as they
put
can run
Georgia.
the ball. I'm just worried about the receiving core, honestly.
I definitely understand because again, talent wise on paper, Texas is always going to be in these every year, at least have been the last 2 or 3 years in these conversations as far as they may be the most talented team out of anybody in the nation. So that's all I have for the King of the Hill. I just think, especially schedule wise, think they're going to go 11-1, and nobody in the SEC, excuse me, is going to go 11-1. So I'm going to give them their respect. They don't play Texas, so that obviously helps. I think they play Oklahoma, but I think it's a home game as well.
They
So
play
I like
they
the way
play
it turns out.
Oklahoma in Georgia on September 26th. They play at Alabama in October 10th. And then the next week they play Auburn on the 17th of October. And then the 31st of October they play Florida. And then the next game on the 7th of November they play at Ole Miss. So that's kind of a tough stretch there, but it's nothing like the others at the top.
I agree with you, Cole. I think they're going to go 11-1. They're going to probably stumble on one of the games Rob just listed off there. They won't win all 5 of those games.
I think
They'll
they
beat
lose
one of the
2
games.
again.
Yeah, I
That's
think one of those
my
games.
philosophy.
You
They're
think
gonna lose 2
I think
again.
they split Ole Miss on the road and Bama on the road. Do you think they lose both those, or they sneak up somewhere else, like a Florida team sneaks up on them or somebody like that?
I think they lose 2 games total. I think they just dropped the ball twice against really good teams.
I think they're going to beat Bama. I think they'll beat Bama. They may lose to Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's very good this year. One of those games they'll definitely stub their toe.
I think Alabama's gonna be a little tougher, playing with a chip on their shoulder. That might be a drop. And Oklahoma, I mean, I think that's a tough one.
Don't forget
I
they
think they're
lost to
gonna
Ole
want a piece
Miss
of Ole
last year in
Miss.
the playoffs as well to Pete Golding.
That's true. It's possible.
So that's all I got for that tier. That's my personal opinion. In this next tier, the playoff contenders, I have 5 teams in here, and I debated for a long time sneaking a 6th one in there too. And I think there's a very good argument for that 16 to be in there. I'll talk about them when we get down to it. But again, record wise, I actually have Alabama going second here, 10-2. And I did not like it because I had Alabama as one of those 8-4, 9-3 teams before looking at the schedules. I think Alabama is probably 8-4, 9-3 team in the SEC. But you look at their schedule, Alabama has the 3rd easiest SEC strength of schedule, which again is still like top 15 in the nation. There's no SEC team that has anywhere near an easy schedule, but it is far and away down at the bottom of a team of 17 teams or conference with 17 teams. It's right there. They had a weird year last year when they ended up going 11-4. Weirdly enough, he started winning a couple road games. That was my big concern with him, was that he couldn't win on the road. You guys remember the year before that? I think they went like 1-3 on the road. And then they ended up winning a bunch of road games last year, but slept up a couple times to teams they shouldn't have at home. So Keelan Russell is interesting. I know everybody's concerned about somebody like this. He's a dual threat guy, though. I think he named starter recently. I think he can do pretty good. It might take a little bit for him to get used to the system. They lost a lot in offense, but they still have Ryan Williams. He's obviously a playmaker. They lost their best wide receiver as well. He was very good. But they did add Noah Rogers, NC State Noah Rogers. So I expected him to do pretty good and get some touches over there in that system. They also lost their star tight end to the NFL. That's going to happen at somewhere like Alabama. They got a couple of defensive linemen from Oregon as well. Oregon, as we know, has had a very good defense the last couple of years. And they have a really good secondary and returned 3 starters in the back 7 too. So a lot of it's just believing in the defense and the schedule carrying them to a 10-win season. I could very easily see them going 9-3. And I think talent-wise, again, they may be an 8-4 team, but I just think they're going to win a lot of these games that are kind of coin flip games. Is that crazy? What do you guys think about 10-win Alabama?
So I like Alabama a good amount this year. There's a couple of things that stand out to me. Ryan Williams, I think, is one of the top 3 receivers in the league, along with Malachi Tony and Cam Coleman. So they got some new offensive pieces, especially offensive linemen. They lost 4 starting offensive linemen, but people who are close to the program are actually really excited because they didn't think they were very good. I mean, they were getting pancaked a lot. They weren't getting a lot of push. They couldn't run the ball effectively last year, which is really weird for Alabama. To see an Alabama team that doesn't run well, they had -3 yards rushing against Georgia. That's not a normal Alabama team. And even though Kalen DeBoer is known for throwing, he was known for throwing at Washington, and that is kind of his bread and butter. It's still Alabama. You still need to grind it out to win games. Um, their schedule is pretty hard. You know what's so wild about seeing all these SEC teams is we pick all of them to go 10-2, but they all play each other. That's not possible. So you have to decide who's going to have the 7-6, or whatever the numbers work out to be. They have their big games are Florida State in September 18th in Alabama. They have Georgia October 10th, also in Alabama, and then at Tennessee the 17th, and at A&M the 24th, and at LSU. So that's kind of a rough 4 games in a row there. And then it gets easier. So they should finish kind of strong. But there's a lot of things I like about Alabama. I really think they've added some nice pieces through transfers. The defense should definitely be better. They concentrated on edge and secondary. DeBoer's been a great recruiter. He's 20-8 in the last 2 seasons. And they were really bad last year at running the ball. I think they're going to concentrate really effectively on that this year. They also have Ryan Grubb on offense coordinator and Kane Womack at defense coordinator. Good continuity. I think that helps a lot in the era of transfer portal and recruiting together. You basically are spending your time split between those two things now. It's not all transfer portal. It's bringing in high school kids into the system, trying to build them up, try and hang on to them too, because once you build them up, they're going to want to start eventually. And so I think Kalen DeBoer is very good at that. So I think they're going to be better. I don't know about 12-2 or anything, but they're going to beat some really good teams in their conference.
I've got them going 9-3. I agree with you guys. They're in that second tier just below Texas and Georgia. I like them going 9-3. I do think they'll be better this year. They'll be able to run the ball a little better. I am very concerned about their quarterback position. I think they're one of the most unsettled teams at quarterback, and Kalen DeBoer likes to really utilize the passing game. That's his favorite thing. I will say, looking at the NIL budgets this year, last year they had $19 million to spend on football. This year they have $33 million to spend on football. So they've gone way, way up.
Wow.
What's amazing is they're still 4th in the SEC. So Alabama has climbed a lot financially. One of the reasons Nick Saban left was he didn't think he could compete financially. And now all of a sudden, Alabama's spending $33 million on this year's squad. So I do think they'll be better than last year. I just don't see them at the top of the SEC anymore. I think they're that kind of 9-3 team. They may be one of those 2 SEC teams that gets into the playoff at 9-3. That's what I see.
I want to dissect their schedule a little bit because I want to talk about why I think they're more likely an 8-4 team on paper in the SEC, but I like them to go 10-2 here. I don't see them having a losable game until, I guess, South Carolina. I'm not too worried about Florida State. South Carolina is a little bit up and down. I know they gave them a good fight 2 years ago. South Carolina was down last year. I expect them to come up a little bit, but especially, again, I'm going to trust Kalen DeBoer at home against South Carolina. The Mississippi State game is a little bit of a game that I'm worried about. It's look ahead game against Georgia the following week, because obviously there's a big thing going on with Georgia, and that's a road game. But I trust them to take care of business, so I expect them to go 5-0 until that stretch, where between Georgia, at Tennessee, A&M, and at LSU, I think they go 2-2 and lose their 2 games there. If you say they lose 3 of those 4 games, I'll definitely hear you out about it. I think they probably lose to Georgia, and I think they probably lose at LSU. I think that they'll beat Tennessee despite it being real hard to win in Neyland, and I think they'll take care of A&M at home as well. That's why I got 10-2, but I'll hear you out on 9-3 pretty easily as well. What do you guys think?
I think you're right about the 2 losses, and I bet you they have one more somewhere else. So I
Me
think they
too.
have at least 3 losses, but not much more than that. I think they're really better. I think the alumni are going to be a lot happier. I don't think DeBoer's going to be on the hot seat after this year. I think that he's done a good job of building the program and just telling his alumni to hang on, stick with us.
I like them to go 2-2 in that stretch too, Cole, but I agree with Rob. I think they always find a way, at least the last 5 years, to sneak a loss out of a game they really should win somewhere along the line.
I think
Maybe
there's
like a
another thing to
1-point loss.
consider. The the past is important here. You have to understand, why were they struggling so hard? I really believe it was because they weren't competitive in the NIL market. Like they really got thumped by the Big Ten, who was the first ones to open their checkbook. The SEC was paying players before anyone else for the most part, and they're not used to having to compete in buying players. They're used to just being able to do it under the table and get players. As soon as everyone was allowed to do it, they're not used to competing.
That's right.
So,
That's exactly right.
but I
I
think they've
definitely
gotten
agree.
the hang of it. I think they realize we're gonna have to pour money into this thing to even be competitive.
Mhm.
So I think Alabama's gonna be a little definitely better and pretty competitive, even though I wouldn't. They're outside that top tier.
I definitely agree. I'm gonna group these three teams in together as well because I have all these three teams going 9-3. I have Oklahoma at the third slot going 9-3. Third, they're gonna be right outside the conference in my predictions here, right outside the conference championship game. I have Ole Miss going 9-3, and I have LSU going 9-3. And I know you guys don't hear a name that you expect to hear. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what do you guys think about Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and LSU going 9-3? Does that all sound about right as far as their schedules and their talent on paper?
That's what I've got all three of them at, is 9-3. Absolutely.
Pretty likely.
Yep.
One of them
I think
might falter a little. Sorry. One of them might falter a little bit.
I
But
think LSU may, they have by far the biggest NIL budget this year, 43 million. I think that they're going to get better throughout the year. They may drop one or two early that they shouldn't, but because they're under a new program, a new coach, new coaching staff, new system, they've got 40 transfer players. It's going to take a little while for LSU to kind of warm up, but they're going to get very good by the end of the year.
This Oklahoma team is really fun. They had a very weird season. Obviously, Brent Venables has done a really good job over there trying to keep them afloat. And they were not quite the same team after Mateer got injured. Robbie said that the other day. He was playing through injury and was probably three-quarters of himself, if even that, for a lot of those games in the second half of that year. So I'm calling. Well, I'm not calling, but I'm gonna assume his prediction is that Mateer stays healthy. And this team is really loaded on paper, more on offense than I expected. We know their defense is going to be great. They returned 7 stars on defense. I think they probably have the best defense in the nation, besides maybe in Oregon. That they are very, very good on that side of the ball. Offensively, they kept two of their best rushers. They kept Isaiah Satanga, who had a really good year, 1,000 yards pass or receiving last year as well. They did lose wide receiver two, and they're tied into the NFL, so that's some talent gone, obviously. But they grabbed Trell Harris from Virginia. You guys are probably pretty familiar with Trell Harris. And then Parker Livingstone from Texas. He had 500 yards last year going against, SEC competition as well. The O-line is loaded this year. They're just hoping that they can run the ball because they had trouble running the ball last year as well, despite John Mateer obviously being a dual threat quarterback. So I think if the O-line is better and they can run the ball better, they're going to have a whole different dimension unlocked on offense that's going to make this team, again, just a whole tier above what I expect them to be last season. Unfortunately, we said before they have the second hardest strength of schedule in college football, and it's so easy to look at why they could only win 8 games despite being maybe the fourth best team in the nation, right? I know that sounds crazy out loud, but I respect this Oklahoma team a lot. I just don't know the schedule they have that they're gonna win more than 9 games on. You guys agree with me about that, don't you?
I think their schedule is so hard that 9 wins would be tough.
If they
But
get 9 wins with this schedule, they should just be jumping for joy because it's the toughest schedule
Yeah.
in the country, in my opinion.
whoever put it together really did them a disservice, I think.
What's interesting, Cole, is they just re-signed Venables to a 6-year extension. So they basically gotten past where he was on the hot seat 2 seasons ago, and now they're happy with him. They're happy with the program they're building. They've got $30 million to spend on this roster in NIL, and they're building something really special. They said that this Oklahoma team this year is last year's Ohio State team in terms of defense. They think that there will be 7 guys drafted off this defense in the first and second round of the NFL draft.
I believe it's
That's
the
how much
best.
talent they have.
I believe it's the best defense in the country. And last year they had tremendous trouble running the ball. They brought in the coach, the running back coach. He worked with both Genty and Jeremiah Love. Very good running back coach. And they also have Jason Witten working with their tight ends and stuff. So they've taken a serious look at their offense, and they've identified areas they felt like they were weak. And I really think they've made a lot of steps. John Mateer was playing really well when he hurt his thumb. And then the number of completions like past 10 yards went way down, and he really was playing hurt and did the best he could, but it wasn't pretty. And I think now that they're saying that he's 100% healthy, and I think it just gives them a whole new opportunity. I think that they're a really good team. I just wish their schedule was different.
Yeah.
They led the country in tackles for loss. They had 45 sacks, which was third. And when they played Auburn, they sacked them 9 times. And they might be better on defense this year. So
yeah. I want to look at the schedule a little bit here. Do you guys think it's crazy that they lose to Michigan in the second game of the season? Am I weird for feeling like Michigan can win that game at the Big House?
I think Oklahoma wins that one because they're healthy.
I think Oklahoma will win that game, but is it impossible that Michigan can win at home in front of 10,000 people? No, it's not impossible.
I like what Michigan is doing. I just think it's going to take 2 years. I don't think it's going to show up this year in a head-to-head Michigan versus a top SEC team. I think the SEC team wins.
Now, if the two of them played in November, then I'd say Michigan would have a much better shot at winning, but I do think Oklahoma will find a way to get it done.
Especially early in the season when they haven't run through Murderer's Row yet.
Yeah. The next one, though, is Georgia. Not next game. They actually play New Mexico, New Mexico is a really good team. I don't know if you guys know anything about New Mexico, but I think they won 10 games last year. They have a good chance to win the Mountain West this year. I wasn't really looking at that as a game they could lose because it's at home and it's a group of 6 team, but if it's going to be a group of 6 team to give them a hard time ahead of the at Georgia game the following week, it's going to be New Mexico's offense. They're not going to lose that game. I really don't think so, but that game could be tougher than they expect. And then obviously at Georgia, followed by Texas. There's a bye week in between, but Texas as well, the Red River rivalry. That game is neutral site in Dallas, I believe it is. I mean, I don't think it's that crazy that they could be 2-3. I think 3-2 after those 5 games, they're probably pretty happy with. At least they should be. They may not be. Maybe Brent Venables once 4-1, but 3-2 is not that bad out of this.
And I will tell you, Texas usually struggles against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's kind of had their number for many, many years. I do think Texas is going to win that game this year, but I would not be shocked at all if Oklahoma pulls it off, 21-20 or something.
I just can't believe
they always play Texas tough.
I can't believe they have at Georgia followed by Texas at a neutral site. So both are basically travel games back to back. That's rough.
By the way, the ratings for that Red River rivalry are going to be very, very high.
It's going to be good this year, yeah.
It's going to be a great game.
According to ESPN here, it's $500 to get into the stadium. So they're going to make a lot of money in ticket sales as well here.
Yeah.
They got a couple easier games here as well. I wouldn't say they're easy, but it's Kentucky at Mississippi State, South Carolina, and at Florida. And again, they could definitely slip up one of those games, maybe down to the swamp. Maybe South Carolina is better than we expect, like they were a couple of years ago. But like you need to go 4-0 in that stretch of your Oklahoma with the schedule you have, right?
I think that's a tough stretch. South Carolina at Florida, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and then at Missouri. Oof.
Tough. That's why I've got them to be the best 9-3 team in the country this year.
If they lose one of those 4 games, they're not winning 9 games. If they lose to Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi State, or Kentucky, this team is not winning 9 games and not making the playoffs. That's it. Their season's over just like that.
That's what I'm worried about. It could easily happen. They don't make the playoffs, even though they're one of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah, they could be top 4 or even top 10 and be 8-4 quite easily, and they could explain it.
I will say
it'd be sad if they didn't make the playoff.
Yeah, definitely.
Unless there's injuries and they're not very good with their backups. With their starting team, they should be in the playoff. And if they're not, it's just simply malpractice of scheduling.
I will also say the last 3 games, Ole Miss at home, A&M at home, and at Missouri. If you were going to tell me that I had to have those 3 games at the end of the season, and I can only schedule one of them to be on the road, this is how I would draw it up. I wouldn't want to go to Ole Miss. I wouldn't want to play Allen Field, and I would prefer to play at Missouri. Not that you want any of this, but it's not impossible to say that they go 2-1 in these games, in my opinion.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is you have to grab those because you've already played Michigan, New Mexico, Georgia, and Texas straight in a row. Like somewhere in there, you're going to lose one or two of those. There's no room for error. I think this is a perfect example of if the committee doesn't start giving some credit for strength of schedule, this should be the end of it. Everyone should just put powder cakes all over their
Which is what
schedule.
Notre Dame did, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why they went with the powder cake schedule because they want to go 10-2, 11-1.
You have to.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can't lose any of them. Yeah, okay, fine. But you won't lose any of them. You're playing, these lowly teams that are, bottom 50 in the country, bottom 100.
It's so fun. I've looked at the schedule 3 times, and I did not recognize New Mexico was on here until, like, just now. I mean, that team could be ranked by the end of the year if they play, especially if they play Oklahoma okay and they only lose 2 games. And this is maybe their 3rd easiest game on the schedule,
Yeah.
right? Maybe
That's what I'm saying.
2nd?
That's their must win.
Yeah. No, that's so
I just
funny.
feel a little bad for them this year. That's it. They're
I do
good.
too.
They're a really good team. They should be top 5 probably in the country. And I don't think they're going to be because of their record.
Do you guys think, make predictions here, do you guys think they make the playoffs?
I'm a believer in Oklahoma. I think because they've got the 7 NFL players on defense, I think they're going to scratch out a lot of really close wins, 21-20, 23-20 kind of games, and I do think they make it, and they make it in at 9-3. Matter of fact, I think they and Alabama will both be 9-3 and both make it in barely.
I agree with that.
Maybe be the 11th or 12th teams.
I
I will
think they're
say,
going to be
Tom,
9-3, but
that hypothetical gives you a lot of difficulty down the road. I'll come circle back around with you in a couple teams, but if both those teams are 9-3 and get in, you have a couple more SEC teams that are going to be in that exact same spot, and you got to tell me if they get in or not too.
not with that record.
Not with that
Not with
schedule. Yeah,
the strength of schedule.
I agree.
I think their 9-3 is going to be more impressive than anyone else's 9-3, and maybe even 8-2.
I don't think it should be a
10-2.
competition. Yeah, I definitely agree.
I think Oklahoma has the number 1 defense. They have continuity. They have one of the only situations where it's same quarterback, same coach, offense coordinator, defense coordinator, everything. Continuity. That's rare because the good teams tend to lose coordinators
Right.
to the NFL and to head coaching positions. So even if you have the same quarterback and head coach, you don't have your OC anymore.
That's why I'm going 9-3 and making the playoffs. So next we have Ole Miss, and obviously this is just a big talking point. Everybody's got eyes on him after Lane Kiffin left. Pete Golding's gonna be his first year. Definitely outperformed. I think everybody's in agreement about that in the playoffs, winning as many games as they did with Trinidad Chambliss. They brought in ECU's offensive coordinator, John David Baker, which is interesting. He's done good at ECU. They've had a good offense in the American for a couple years when he was there. He's also Ole Miss legacy hire, so that's a good story. I do wonder if they could have got somebody better. I'm a little shaky on it, but we'll see what the offense looks like this year. Obviously, they have a ton of top end talent. They kept Trinidad Chambliss. They still have Kwan Lacey. These are massive, massive guys here that are going to do a lot on offense, just raising your ceiling. They did lose their top 2 wide receivers and tight end to the NFL. So again, that's another talent issue they have coming in. But they kept Deuce Alexander and then on a wide receiver. And then they brought in Syracuse's top 2 wide receivers. Did you guys see that? That's super funny to me that they took Syracuse's 2 top guys. I wonder why they chose the orange there. I do think the offense is going to take a slight step back because of how much they lost to the NFL. But I have to put faith in Kwan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss to carry this team to a, I don't know, top 15 offense at worst, right? Just because of, how much they have and obviously the offensive schemes that John David Baker come up with. They also have a top 15 defense, in my opinion. They got 5 stars back. The defensive line looks really good. They have good linebacker transfers coming in as well. I like this team to go 9-3. I could see them going 8-4. As I said, this is one of those 6 teams that was 8-4, 9-3 in my head, looking before going to schedules. I like this Ole Miss team. The defense is there. The offense is there. I'd like Pete Golding to bring them back in the playoffs, but probably be a little bit worse than last year. What do you guys think?
I've got them at 10-2. I think they're going to be really, really good again. I think they're sneaky good. I think that coaching staff has proven themselves. They're going to have another offseason under their belts. They brought in a lot of good transfer players. They have a young receiving core, so we'll see. They're kind of unproven, but we'll see if they click with Trinidad early. But he just has a special extra sauce. I don't know what it is about Trinidad, but I really, really like him as one of the best quarterbacks. So I've got them being a sneaky 10-2 and going back to the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this team. I think that they have stability with Pete Golding. I think that he did a good job of steadying the waters when Kiffin leaving right as they were getting into the playoffs. Trinidad Chambliss is probably the best quarterback in the country. That's debatable, but his numbers, it's not debatable as far as his numbers go. 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He was 8th in the Heisman race last year. They've done a really good job of keeping together some of their best players. Keywan Lacey had 1,500 yards and 24 touchdowns. He was a scoring machine. Their defense got deeper. They added 8 four-star players to their defense in transfers. So they are going to have the weapons they need to be deep and to roll quite well. I think that the argument for Ole Miss being beatable was their defense was questionable, and I think they addressed that before it even got to the season. But there is one problem. Their schedule is not quite as hard as Oklahoma, but it's pretty close.
I wanted to say, Tom, I need to circle back with you about this 10-2 because I don't know how they don't lose 3 games in here, unfortunately.
This is a 9-3 team that is maybe on the cusp of not being the playoff.
I think it's a 9-3 team that gets one extra win they probably shouldn't have. So that's why I'm arguing 10-2. I've got Georgia 11-1. I've got Texas 10-2. I've got Ole Miss 10-2. And I got those 3.
Have you done the math though? Like, does that work?
That's what I had to do with the SEC was that a couple of these teams had to lose 4 and 5 games, and I didn't like it either.
Yeah.
I've got those, got both 10-2. Then I've got Alabama and Oklahoma at 9-3. And then everybody else drops off after that. We can go over that when we go with you.
Rob, I had to move like 3 or 4 games at the end of my research because I was like, this team doesn't beat this and go this record. This team doesn't beat this and go this. I had to move like 3 or 4 things around because the match just didn't work out how I wanted it to. So Tom, I think their 4 hardest games are LSU, obviously a massive game. The old, everybody's talking about the Lane Kiffin, maybe the biggest storyline of the year.
Yeah.
That game in week 4, I believe it is, September 19th. And then a couple weeks later, they play at Texas. 2 weeks after that, they play Georgia. And then that following game right after that, they play at Oklahoma. So you think they find a way to beat LSU, 2 of LSU at Texas, Georgia, and at Oklahoma?
I think they beat Oklahoma, and I think they beat LSU, and I think they lose to Georgia. Yep.
That's fair.
I think LSU's not quite there.
LSU as well.
I
what
told
about
you
at Texas?
I told you LSU is going to take time to build up this year. This is a new program, a new coaching staff, new everything, basically an entirely new team. And so I think that's going to take a while for LSU to gel, and I think Ole Miss will catch them.
But listen, some of their must-win games are Louisville.
Yeah, I mean,
Auburn.
Look, they're the kind of team that when you look at their schedule, they can go 10-2 or they can go 7-6.
Louisville, Auburn, Florida. These are must-win games.
Yep.
Listen, I don't know if I predicted it or not, but Florida's going to win a game at the Swamp that they're not supposed to.
True.
And I don't know who it's going to be, but I promise you it'll happen.
Yeah.
But I still see Florida being like 7-5. I see Auburn being 6-6 or 7-5. A lot of these teams, they're very good teams. They're just in the worst division they could be in. They're going to come in 6-6.
Yeah, if you put them in the Big 12.
South Carolina will probably be 6-6, and they're going to be a really tough team to beat. So
yeah, we'll get down to that.
They're going to slaughter somebody in a bowl game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you guys hear about Pete Golding had the FBI come in and scan the locker rooms for listening devices?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's how much they trusted Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Yep. He had the FBI come in and look for bugs.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is. Lane Kiffin,
Let's just say they didn't trust the man.
Yeah.
I'll also say Ole Miss had a $15 million NIL budget last year and went to the semifinals of the playoff. This year they doubled it. They're at $30 million this year in NIL budget. So they
hold on. Tom, is every SEC team at 30 million plus? I feel like you've said 7 teams that are at least 30 million.
LSU's 43, Texas 40, A&M 36, Alabama 33, Tennessee 33, Georgia 33, Oklahoma 30, Ole Miss 30, and then it drops off after Ole Miss. You got Auburn 28, South Carolina 27, Florida 26.
It's
So
not
yeah,
much of a drop off. It's just
so
a
you
couple
got
million.
the top 8 teams in NIL are 30 million or above. It's pretty
I
incredible.
promise you there were SEC meetings that said we are losing to the Big Ten because they have such big
A
checkbooks.
lot of these teams, literally,
If we don't
Robbie,
where our mouth is, we will never see another national
a lot of
championship.
these teams, Robbie, doubled their NIL budget in 1 year. So
They
Ole
had
Miss
to.
is one of them. They went from 15 to 30. That's crazy.
They asked themselves, do we want to win or do we not? Because this is the only way we're going to win. And it sounds like every team ponied up.
And down at the very bottom, you got Vanderbilt and Mississippi State at 14 million.
Next, I have LSU, obviously Lane Kiffin going here as well. LSU was weird last year under Brian Kelly, and I didn't realize because it was kind of a train wreck, and there was a lot of rumors about it, so I wasn't paying as much attention to them. They ended up going 7-6. They had a ton of offensive problems, especially running the ball. Do you remember a reporter asked him about running the ball, and he was really snappy with the reporter? This is early on in the year. It's probably the second or third game of the year. It's a lot of problems. They actually averaged under 24 points per game on offense, which is just, especially for an LSU team that has such a recent history of scoring a lot. That's not good to me. However, their defense was better than I expected. They only gave up 19.8 points a game last year. Again, I was just not paying as much attention to them because I thought they were a tier below, which they were. This year they picked up Sam Levitt, great quarterback, a dual threat guy as well from Arizona State. Was thought about being a top 10 pick this past year. Got hurt, didn't play as good. He decided to come back another year and play for Lane Kiffin. They also picked up a guy, wide receiver named Trey Brown from Old Dominion. He had 700 yards, a fifth-year senior. And a guy by the name of Jackson Harris from Hawaii that almost had 1,000 yards. Hawaii's had a fun offense the last couple of years, too, with their quarterback. He had 6 games with 100-plus yards, so they're going to get a lot of offense in this team. I expected at least the wide receiver room to run up the score a little bit here. Last year, they only averaged 104 yards on the ground per game, which is just criminally low, I feel like. And they kept their 2 running backs, which, again, I think is also a little bit strange. When you couldn't run the ball, but you keep your personnel there. They did have 2 really good offensive line transfers, and they kept Blake Baker around as well. So I think that, that'd be really good on defense. I have a couple questions about their defensive line and that they lost a lot of talents. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to gel, like we've said before. This is another one of those 8-4, 9-3 teams that I think is going to struggle at the beginning of the year. It's going to be a much better team by the end of the year, but actually I think their schedule also picks up by the end too. So I have them as 9-3 as well. What do you guys think?
I've got them at 8-4. I think that we talked about it. I think they may drop 2 out of their first 5 or 6 and then kind of gel and get better towards the end of the season. But I just think it's going to take Lane Kiffin a while to get that team settled and, buying into the system that he's brought to town. But again, they've got the biggest NIL budget in the country at 43 million. They have a lot of transfers coming in. I've seen a lot of interviews this week from coaches who say how hit and miss the transfer portal can be.
They
You're going
nailed
to
the quarterback,
Yeah.
both running backs, wide receivers, linebackers. They nailed every single transfer pickup, and they brought in a lot of new players, and almost all of them were starters, and they
And what
played well.
Saban was saying was you're going to usually hit on about half of those guys coming out of the
Yeah,
portal. And I just
you
don't
miss on
think
some.
with LSU bringing 40 portal guys in, you can't tell me that all 40 are going to be a hit. You're going to have a bunch of guys who are misses that they're really relying on to be good. So I just see them having a little bit of a slow start and getting it rolling towards the end of the year, but not quite making the playoff. I got them at 8-4.
So
Rob,
I
one
think
thing before you talk. Do you think, I look at the schedule here, they first 3 and 4 games is at Ole Miss, again, that massive game I was talking about, and then versus Texas A&M at home. Do you think, Rob, if they lose both of these games, their playoff chances are over? Be 2-2 at the start of the year?
pretty much. There's a lot of just solid SEC teams they have to play after that. They're all beatable, but I wouldn't want to play Kentucky, Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, and Arkansas
It's
back to
unbelievable.
back.
You do
I
this
know.
with every team, unfortunately.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, you're right. I mean, if they drop both of those games, their season's over.
If LSU goes 9-3 like you think, Cole, I think that they should absolutely celebrate with that schedule. I think that, with a new program coming in, new coaching staff, and a completely new roster, if they go
They have the
9-3,
number
that's an
one
incredible
portal
job.
class. Okay, they have
Yeah.
17 4 and 5 stars coming in. A lot of times they work out because they already have experience under their belt. They kind of know the routine. They know the drill, how to manage their time and themselves. Lane Kiffin is awesome on offense, and he was really, really smart in keeping Blake Baker on defense. So
Absolutely.
I think they're gonna be a really tough team, but I think it's an 8-4 team.
That's fair. I think LSU, especially if you believe they're going to lose those 2 games or even something down the road, that they are an 8-4 team. 8-4 is a pretty good team as well with this
Yeah.
schedule. And, first year under Lane Kiffin expectations. It's a lot to turn around. New coach,
I mean,
everything changing.
even their starting game against Clemson's not easy.
Yeah.
That's not an easy game.
Yeah.
That's on September 5th.
Their schedule's not quite as tough as Oklahoma, but it's pretty close. It's
So
tough.
there's a lot of those, unfortunately.
Well, when you
That's
have
why the
Kentucky
SEC
and
is like
Mississippi
all of the
State,
top 15. Check the schedule.
when you have Kentucky, Mississippi State teams like that, those teams are really tough. Like, it's not that they're going to go to the playoff or anything, but they can really, they have quality, talented players. NFL guys.
For my sake of what I did here, I had them splitting A&M and Ole Miss. I had them beating Texas A&M there. But again, it's back-to-back games. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose both of those. They're both preseason top 10 teams. One of them's on the roads, the rematch with, Lane Kiffin Bowl. And then they got a 3-game stretch here, 3 weeks in a row. They have versus Alabama at home, versus Texas at home, and at Tennessee. And I think I think they split these games up here, and I think they win one of those 3. And again, a lot of this is just expecting them to not lose to a team like at Auburn, which is going to be really difficult. Something like that. I expect them to, predicting wise, I predict them to win all those games.
I think they beat Tennessee because Tennessee's going to take a little step back this year. So I've got
Yeah, I
them
agree.
That's what I had
They'll beat
too.
Tennessee, they'll lose to Texas, and then Alabama's a toss-up.
And I had them losing to A&M beating A&M, beating Tennessee to get that 9-3 record. That's how I predicted. Again, I don't love a lot of the SEC. This middle pack is so hard to predict.
The game that has to be the must-watch for the entire country has to be Ole Miss, LSU.
You guys have any other thoughts about LSU?
Yeah, I mean, I think their transfer class was not only that it had a lot of good players in it, but it targeted really important positions. They got the number 1 transfer quarterback, they got the number 1 left tackle, the number 1 edge rusher, and very highly touted wide receiver recruits. So I think that they address needs really aggressively, and they're still doing crazy stuff with NFL players potentially. And I don't know. I mean, I think they could be pretty darn good.
This is the last team I have in this playoff contenders, and I have the Texas Longhorns going 8-4 this year. And I think I've seen people have them as 11-1. I've seen people have them as a 10-2, 9-3. I think I may have seen one person have 8-4. It is a lot of their schedule, but the main thing I want to say, did you guys realize how bad they were on the road last year? I had that epiphany while researching. Did you guys know that in the moment last season? Their
Yeah,
their road their road games, they lost to Ohio State in week 1. Very excusable. Far and away the most excusable in this list of road games, right? 14-7. Arch Manning had a bad game. It's hard to win over there. They lost the next home game. They lost to Florida. Less excusable.
that was
29-21.
inexcusable. That should never have happened.
They beat Kentucky, what did Kentucky win, like 4 games last year? They beat Kentucky in overtime at Kentucky, 16-13. I mean, Kentucky had a very good defense last year, but you need to be able to beat Kentucky in regulation if you're Texas last year. They beat Mississippi State the following week, 45-38 at Mississippi State in overtime as well. That's 2 overtime games against teams that were under 500. And then they played against a real team quote unquote real teams, right? A real team in the ACC in Georgia, next road game, and they lost 35-10. I mean, this team was like, besides the Ohio State game, this team was more or less abysmal on the road.
And do you know why that is?
Mm-mm.
Because when you're on the road, you have to run the ball and play defense really effectively, and their offensive line got whooped really badly. Teams
They
like
could.
Florida absolutely destroyed their offensive
Rob
lines.
just nailed it. They always run the ball well every year except for last year. They usually have a Bijan Robinson or someone like that, and they run the ball down your throat. And then they usually play top 5 defense, and they didn't do either one of those last year. So that's
And the
why.
first half of the year, Manning did not play well. Against UTEP, he was getting booed. He threw 10 straight incompletions against
Do you,
UTEP.
do you know what they said? Travels, defense travels. And
Defense and
so
running the
and
ball.
so the reason that old Oklahoma, although they won't be 12-0 this year, but the reason they're going to be really tough even when they're on the road is because they have such a great defense.
Well,
Yeah,
also
when
And
you run
say,
the ball, you run
guys,
the clock down, you keep the scoring low,
so
your defense steps up. You can withstand the pressure that you feel when the other team's crowd's going wild.
so the reason I take Cole's 8-4 record and I make it 10-2, I think Texas will be 10-2. And the reason is because I think their defense is substantially better this year. I think their offensive line is better, and I think you'll see Arch take a step. I really do, and I think you'll see them be substantially better this year.
I definitely agree with you about Arch taking a step. Again, he, like you said earlier, Rob, he played very well in the second half. I mean, the whole team played a lot better second half of you. They looked very good in the second half, and I understand why everybody's really high on them carrying momentum from that, especially Arch Manning by himself. My concern is that I guess I'm just tired of, like, once I saw Texas be as good as they were 2 years ago, I thought, "Okay, they're here to stay. This is what everybody's been talking about for so long." And then last year, I heard the exact same things about how Texas is back. We're here. They got a top 10 defense. They're gonna do everything good because they're so talented on paper. And then they disappointed me. And I look back at their road games, and then I hear, besides the run game, because now they have Hollywood Smothers, and I got another running back that's like a 1,000-yard guy somewhere else too. I like this team
Yeah.
on paper a little bit more than that, but again, just I am concerned after seeing that this is going to be the team with their strength of schedule too, because I think they are third in strength of schedule, and I'll point out some games that I think they could lose. I think there's 6 of them. They, this is borderline Oklahoma level, by the way. This schedule is ridiculous on paper. They also have Texas State, who's one of the best group of 6 teams, as their third easiest game as well. Um, I think, again, this and the next team I'll talk about are the 2 teams that I think are, with their schedules and how they played last year, I could see them being the team that has to lose 4 games. I don't like doing it. I think on paper they are better. It's kind of Oklahoma, but one step down, because I just have concerns about their road games. If they prove me wrong this year, I will put faith in them again like I did 2 years ago. But I had faith last year. They let me down looking at the road games. A little too many red flags for me to crown this team a 10-win team like, I feel like a lot of people do.
I just think one of the main factors of why they lost some close games last year was their inability to score in the red zone and run the ball powerfully. And I think that they realize this. They've been working on their offensive line pretty dramatically. But one of the things that's underrated that has happened here is they brought in Will Muschamp. I think he's one of the best hires for a coordinator in the entire country. He's awesome on defense. He is going to be an absolute animal with the pieces they have in Texas. They added, let's see, Colin Simmons on the edge as an edge rusher. They are loaded all the way across their whole defense. And then look at their offense. They have Wingo on one side, and they added Cam Coleman, who's the best wide receiver prospect in the country. And then at running back, Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers, they're going to have a tandem. So they're going to be able to run the ball. They're addressing the offensive line. They have Cam Coleman and Wingo. You can't double team both of them. They're going to be a nightmare to play on offense. You've got Manning, who finished as one of the top 3 quarterbacks, in my opinion, second half of the year, is how he's going to play this year, unless there's an injury, as long as that offensive line improves some. I don't think it even needs to get that much better. The defense is going to hold teams down like they're supposed to with Will Muschamp's system. A lot of the nice players they've gotten from the transfer portal, and they just kind of loaded up again. And I think they have a tough schedule, but do you think anybody wants to see Texas on their schedule?
No. As a matter of fact, the other thing I'd mention is their defense is almost as good as Oklahoma's, which may be the best in the country. It's almost as good, but their
Similar.
offense is substantially better than Oklahoma's. Matter of fact, Oklahoma scratches out 21 to 20 wins, whereas Texas has a offense that will score 40 plus points in most of their games this year.
That's all completely fair, especially with the Will Muschamp thing. Maybe I'm underselling Will Muschamp and what his impact's going to be in year one. I just, again, if you, besides Will Muschamp, everything you said, Rob, do you think you said that last year about Texas too? Because they were supposed to have a top 5, top 10 defense last year as well. Maybe not top
That's
3
why
like Tom is talking about, but again,
that's
I
why
heard
their
a lot of the
coordinator's gone, because they were disappointing on defense. But I
That's
will
true.
say it wasn't entirely their fault. In my opinion, what goes hand in hand is running the ball and defense. If you can't run the ball, your defense is back on the field way too quickly every single time. It took no time off the clock to go 3 and out, and that was happening to Texas a lot. Granted, they got stuffed a lot in the red zone, which is super demoralizing. But I think that they also had a lot of 3 and outs, and they got stopped a lot, and it's because they couldn't run the ball, and so
And
they
a
got
lot of
one
that's on the
dimensional.
offensive line too. You mentioned they've been working in the whole offseason on
Yeah.
bolstering their offensive line. They know that's their number one weakness, and so we'll see. We're going to have to see how they look this year.
Last year in the red zone, 47 times in the red zone, they had 30 touchdowns, 10 field goals, and 7 times they got nothing in the red zone. 7 times? It's a lot.
That is a big number. So I want to
If you look
dissect
at
their schedule as well, because this again, besides the road games, because I am concerned about a lot of these road games. They have tough road games this year, worse than last year. And again, last year they barely beat up on Kentucky and Mississippi State. Is that, do you guys think, again, Texas State is so funny being there because they are probably going to win 9 games as well, and Texas is expected to beat this team by 24 points, right? So that's going to be fun. They have Ohio State next game. You guys, I assume if you guys have them winning 10 games at least, you have them beating Ohio State at home, getting revenge from last year.
I do. I think they'll beat Ohio State this year.
Rob?
It's going to be a really tough game. I think that game is going to decide their season. I think it's going to be, they catapult out from a big win there into kind of handling these other teams, and then 1 or 2 losses in there, maybe Oklahoma, maybe A&M at the end of the year.
I think Texas losing 14-7 last year, it kind of defined their whole season. And I think Rob's right. It's going to define their whole season this year. Losing 14-7 in Ohio State this year, they got them at home. And 14-7 is not going to happen again. And I just like Texas to get it done. I think it'll be a really great game, 33-27, that kind of game. And
One thing I see in their schedule
Texas
that I'd like to point out is that some of the other teams, yeah, they have the 3rd hardest ranked schedule. But what I like about it is that they don't have a murderer's row on there. Like, there's always an easier team tucked in between these monster teams. So
that's a very good point, Rob.
check it out. Like Ohio State, and then UTSA is the next week, and then at Tennessee, and then Oklahoma.
With the bye, there's a bye in between as well.
There's a bye, and then Florida and Ole Miss. That's a little tough. But then Mississippi State, and then at Missouri, and then at LSU. That's a tough one. But then back to Arkansas, and then A&M. Start with Texas State, and then a hard Ohio State, and then an easy UTSA, and then a hard. So it seems like there's some breathing room in there for little injuries and tweaking, and maybe some of the staff can look ahead to the harder team 2 weeks from now without telling the players that they're looking ahead. I think that's way better than some of these teams that have 5 straight hard games.
Yeah,
You're more
there is something to be
likely
said about that. Whereas on paper, when you're looking at everything, it's just these are who they're playing. This is the home, this is away. But the sequencing does make a difference as far as team morale and chemistry and all that stuff goes.
I like Texas's way better than I like Oklahoma's.
I agree.
Me too. Now, there have been 2 teams Texas has not been able to beat the last 4 years, and that's Ohio State and Georgia. And so I think that where Texas wants to go, they've got to learn to beat those two teams, and we'll
And
see.
Oklahoma. You want to throw
We'll
them
see
in
if
there
they
a
can
little
do
bit
it.
as well?
And Oklahoma.
I'd
But
like to quote Kurt Signetti. This team has never played Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In the transfer
Mhm.
portal era, when
true.
20, 30 new guys are coming in, you can't say that this team can't beat that team. None of it is relevant anymore.
That's definitely fair. And I assume, Tom, you already said you have Texas winning the Red River Shootout in
Yep.
Dallas, correct?
I think they're going to get it
Okay.
done this year. Yep.
I like Oklahoma in this game because I think their back's going to be against the wall more than Texas's is. And like you said, Oklahoma's fared pretty good against Texas this past year. A few years. Rob, I know what you just said about not playing this team. I hear you about that. Who do you think is going to win that game?
I think Texas wins that game. I think Arch is going to be on a mission.
Me too.
I think he is.
The same reason I think that they're going to beat Ohio State. They're going to have a little chip on their shoulder from last year. I think Arch
Yeah.
is going to have that the entire season. I think he really wants to prove himself this year. That's why I got them 10-2.
So then you guys have them both winning. Rob, did you say Texas or Ohio? You said it's going to be close. Who do you think is going to win that?
Man, that's going to be one of the hardest games to call because I think it's one of the best matchups. Probably Texas.
Okay. I'm not sure about that game, but I think they're going to slip up. Well, I don't know. I think they're going to lose Oklahoma. I'm going to jump a little bit and say I think Texas A&M at the end of the season gets revenge from last year. I'm not stupid high on A&M. We'll get to them in a second as well. I haven't talked about them yet, but Texas big brother kind of spoiled their season a little bit last year at the end of the year, and I think they're going to be pissed off about it, and they're going to take it out on Texas. And I think if Texas is already a little disappointing with 3 losses in my hypothetical that I'm living with here, I just think A&M is going to win that game because they're going to be pissed off. I have Oklahoma winning that game as well. So then I have them losing 2 of Ohio State, Ole Miss, and at LSU. Those are where my 4 losses come in. You guys, I'm talking about. You guys, I guess have them. If you have them going 10-2, you have them losing one of those games as well, probably, right? Or 2 of those games as well.
I have them beating LSU. I have them beating Ole Miss. And I
So you have
agree.
them
I think
losing. Okay.
they're going to slip up in a game we're not expecting. Maybe A&M, maybe one of those other games. But I have them beating Ole Miss and LSU.
So you have them at 11-1,
10-2.
10-2.
They're going to be 9-3 or 10-2, I think. Red River rivalry is going to be tough because it's an away. It's kind of like an away game. Ohio State's going to be tough. And then, of course, A&M. At A&M is going to be really hard. So
Oklahoma and A&M are both could go either way. They're true coin flips. They really
I
are.
think they win 1 out of those 3.
What is the third one? Ohio State?
A&M, Oklahoma, and Ohio State.
Okay. So you think they go 1-2 in those 3?
They go 1-2 in those 3, and they win all the others. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee. They beat LSU.
I can get behind that. I still have concerns about at LSU at the end of the year. I think that team is going to be really good by the middle of November, but I hear you about that as well.
9-3 or 10-2, one of those, I think.
Gotcha.
Unless Arch gets hurt or.
Yeah, this is all just assuming everybody's healthy and hypothetical here. You guys have any other thoughts about Texas? You guys said you like them to win double-digit games or 9-3 and probably still sneak in, I assume, with the schedule they have.
I think they're a top 4 contender for the national title.
Me too. 100%.
I'm going to go to my next team here, and I was back and forth on what year to put this in. So for this sake, I'll put them in the next one, which is not quite playoffs, but believe me, they're very close to that playoff contender group because I have them going 8-4 as well, and that's Texas A&M. And I am just this last year, looking back at it, was really funny. They started 11-0 last year, and then I said lost to Texas, big brother, in the Austin game. And then they lost to Miami in a really gross playoff game. You guys remember that, where nobody could get anything going on offensively?
Yep.
I still believe if there's any A&M fans, they're not gonna be happy with this. I still think that Texas A&M, even last year, was kind of an 8-4 team disguised as an 11-1 team. I think the 8-4 curse is still around. I don't know if this makes sense at all, but the stars could not have aligned nearly any better for this team. Obviously, they play who's in the schedule and all that. You got to win who you got to win against, and they did that. Shout out to them for that. But like they played Missouri, and Missouri's starting quarterback got hurt the game before, so they started somebody at I think it was at Missouri too that had never started a college football game before. That's luck, right? They won the game, but that's luck. Notre Dame, if you guys remember, missed an extra point at the end of that game to not go into overtime. I consider missed extra points to be a little bit lucky as well. And then do you guys remember the South Carolina game where they were down 30-3 against a team that won 4 games last year at halftime
What an
and
amazing game.
came back and won that game too?
Yep.
So if all three of those don't, again, they beat all those teams, they deserve the credit for it. I don't want to say that. But if three of those don't go that way, this is an 8-4 team. We're talking about something completely different.
It's just like the NFL when I argue with Robbie about, teams like the Chicago Bears who won 10 out of 11 of their games in the fourth quarter with basically a late field goal or late touchdown. They kind of threaded the needle perfectly, and that's not going to happen every year. Some of the years they're not going to go 10-1, they're going to go 6-5 in that situation. I think it's the same thing with A&M. Last year they started 10-0 and looked like they were national championship contenders, and then they wilted down the stretch. They lost a couple really bad games at the end of the year, including that game against Miami. And I agree with you. I think they're going to come back towards the mean a little bit here, and they're going to go 8-4 at best, maybe even 7-5.
I like some of their pickups of players. They had 19 transfers in. I think Elko's an amazing coach. I love Marcel Reed. He's one of the better quarterbacks. He throws some picks, but he has a lot of yardage and 41 touchdowns. So I really like offensively their pieces. Mario Craver at wide receiver, and they've been really aggressive in the portal, and they had to be. They're losing 7 out of their 9 offensive and defensive linemen and replacing them with transfers. They have the 9th hardest schedule, and in my opinion, it's one of my least favorite schedules in the whole top 25 because look at their schedule. You can have hard games, but if you mix in some easier teams, you can catch your breath. Listen to this final stretch. At Alabama, at South Carolina, Tennessee, at Oklahoma, Texas.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's 5 straight horrendous games. They lose 3 or 4 of those. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't, I like the team overall. I really like the coach. I like the quarterback situation. They had 10 NFL defensive players drafted last year. That's hard to replace. Even if you do really well in the portal, there's no guarantees.
If they go 8-4 with the schedule Rob's talking about, they should be proud of themselves. They had a really good year.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was looking at those 5 you said, and I think in my like game by game breakdown, I have them going 2-3 in those games, maybe even 3-2. Like that's unbelievable if they were able to do that. Go 3-2 or 2-3 in those games. I have them losing to LSU early in the season, so I at LSU. So I have them going 2-3 in those games, probably beating South Carolina or Tennessee, one of the two. And then again, I think they're going to get revenge on Texas, but not positive in that. Just a thought.
I think the good news for them is that they have Mike Elko, who's a really good coach. They have top 10 recruiting classes and transfer portal classes. That's hard. Usually teams are one or the other. They were both. They really needed new players, an infusion of new players to help Marcel Reed, and I think they got it. But on the bad side, not only is their final stretch so tough, their last 5 games, but they lost both coordinators.
There's an asterisk behind that. You look more into that.
Yeah, they're both internal hires.
Yes.
And I don't think you really know what you got when you hire the guy that helps draw up plays really well but can't speak to the team or internal hires can be questionable. They're not automatically great hires just because they've been in the building. They may not be great leaders. They might just be really good, solid soldiers that fit into the system well. But when they take on a new leadership role, you can feel the effects when maybe they start losing control of their players and maybe they can't pick their players up when things are going badly and all that other stuff. I'd much rather have proven coaches than internal hires both at the same time. I'd much rather have one or the other. If you lose your defense coordinator, try and keep your offense coordinator. So the head coach can work with the defense coordinator more. I don't like that very much. So
the rest of the teams I have here for the not quite playoffs tier, what I did the SEC, I have Missouri at 7-5, South Carolina 6-6, Tennessee at 7-5. Missouri's pretty interesting because they lost a ton, but they have one of the best running back cores in the nation. They have Ahmad Hardy, who he'll miss game one because he had a gunshot wound, but he should be back pretty soon. He's one of the best running backs in the nation. And then they got a guy from Houston Christian at 1,000 yards in FCS, and then Jamal Roberts who had 7 yards last year too. So you have 3 really solid backs. They brought Austin Simmons in from Ole Miss. Their offense should be pretty good. They lost 13. This is crazy. They lost 13 of their 15 best tacklers last year, or statistically tacklers. So their defense is gonna not be as good. Take a huge step back. I have them going 7-5. South Carolina had an awful year last year. The offense was really bad. They went 4-8, 1-7 in the conference, which is just not. You don't want that at all in the SEC. Shane Beamer's now on the hot seat. They got a new offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles from TCU, who they have done very good offensively for the last couple of years as well. They want to improve the offensive line, which they should with some transfers. Nick Harbor's back as well, which is really nice for them. He's a really great piece for them. Defensive line should still be one of the best. Their defense should be back to what it was. And this team is very talented on paper, but I have them going 6-6. And I will say, if they miss a bowl game, I think Beamer is fired. Do you guys agree with that?
I'm not
yeah,
sure. I'm not sure they're going to fire him after a 6-6 season, but I think he
No, no,
will.
no. If they don't go 6-6, if they miss the bowl,
have you seen their
Uh,
schedule?
yeah, I think maybe if they go 5-7 or lower, then he might get fired. But he is on a warm seat this year. There's no question about it. After last season, if he has another mediocre year this year, I've got them going 6-6. I do think they'll make a bowl, but I think that the rest of the SEC is just too tough. You're now talking about teams now that are in the bottom half of the NIL rosters as well. So South Carolina, Auburn, Florida, Arkansas, these teams, they don't have the big budgets that LSU, Texas A&M have. So they just can't compete.
Have you seen South Carolina's schedule?
I have.
They got at Alabama, Kentucky, at Florida, Tennessee, Oklahoma, A&M, Arkansas, Georgia, and Clemson. Every single one of those teams is better than they are. Well, except for
Arkansas.
Arkansas and Kentucky.
They need to win between. They need to. I looked at it. They need to beat one of Tennessee at home, A&M at home, or at Clemson to make a bowl game this year.
That's right.
That's tricky.
But I mean, what happens when South Carolina plays Kentucky?
Kentucky, I'll talk about them a little bit. They
It's a
lost a
toss-up
lot, but yeah,
because they're both good teams. But I mean,
South Carolina is likely going to be 5-7 or 6-6. That's just how it's
yeah,
going to be because
I
they
think
have
the alumni
that kind of
know
schedule.
that that
Yeah.
schedule right there is not conducive to making a really
And
good
so
bowl
that's
game.
why I think if they win 6, Shane Beamer keeps his job because
but
he's a pretty good
they
coach.
almost made the playoffs 2 years ago, and they were awful last year. So there's a little bit of expectations, which is what I'm holding on to for Shane
Again, that's
Beamer's
why I
hot
keep
seat.
reiterating the NIL numbers because you're seeing the separation within all the big leagues of the top 8 teams with NIL and the bottom 8 teams. And unfortunately, South Carolina's in the bottom 8 teams now.
That's fair. The last team I have in that tier, not quite playoffs, is Tennessee. They lost a lot this year. They got the freshman quarterback coming in as well, Faison Brandon. He should be really good. Last year was normal. They have really great offense, really bad defense. Josh Heupel, he's been doing that for a little while now. Deshaun Bishop returned, 1,000-yard running back. He's gonna be really good. Lost a bunch of tight ends and receivers. 4 stars back on offensive line, so the offense should be good. They brought in Jim Knowles as well as defensive coordinator, which I like a lot too, and I think they could be good in a couple years for sure. There's a few teams that fit that tier in the SEC. The team is surprisingly good on paper, but their schedule is tough. I think if they win a couple of their home games against teams they're not supposed to, 1 or 2 of those, they could honestly be in playoff contention. But I just don't see it happening. I think they're out talented with some of these teams, and I got them going 7-5.
I have 7-5 as well. Tennessee will be 7-5. I think they're going to drop at least 5 games, maybe be 6-6. I think
I
that
will
they've
say their
taken a big
schedule is
step
kind of
back.
nice. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not that hard.
It's a lot of home
If
games
Georgia
is what it is.
if Georgia Tech is down a little, they could beat Furman, Georgia Tech, Kent State. They could beat Auburn in Tennessee. They could. They could beat Arkansas, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. So, they'll probably lose to LSU. They'll probably lose to A&M. They'll probably lose to Alabama and Texas. So that's 4 losses. They're
That's what I
probably
said.
going to
If
have.
they win one of those games, they could go 9-3 and be in playoff contention. Those are all
But
home
they
games, I think.
but they always drop one that they aren't expected to.
I
So
think they're going to lose 4 games.
you could see them losing to like a really bad Kentucky team or something. They always flub
And,
one game every year.
and actually, if they lose 4 games, that's a pretty good season.
Yeah, I think they go 7-5.
That's what I have met too. The
Yeah.
next tier I got is around bowl eligibility. And I said before, this is teams that are either 6-6 or kind of right below as far as talent goes or record. I have Florida going 6-6, Auburn going 5-7, Vanderbilt 5-7, Mississippi State in this tier at 4-8. And these teams, if they do make bowl games, these teams are, like you guys said, is going to kick the snot out of a poor group of 6 team or a poor ACC Big 12 team that is, 8-4, 7-5. And yeah, this Florida's going to be really good in a couple years. I love John Sumrall from Troy and Tulane. There's a really good job. It's going to be fun to watch this team play offense, by the way. They have a bunch of good running backs and they got Aaron Philo from Georgia Tech. He's a dual threat guy as well. Bunch of transfers on offensive line. That's going to be a ton of fun to watch. And then they got the defensive coordinator, Brad White from Kentucky. And you guys know Kentucky's had a very, very good defense last couple of years. Just offense has not been able to keep up. They got a great front seven, just not a great secondary. This team could honestly win 8 games and be kind of in the hunt for playoffs too if they win a couple games in the swamp, which I think they're going to. But I have them at 6-6, being an average SEC team, which is very, very good. You guys agree with that?
I say 6-6, and I say there are going to be a couple teams that are 6-6 in the SEC this year, and there'll be a couple teams that are 5-7, and there's just going to be those kind of middling teams that are, in some cases, coming down to the last game of the year to try to get into a bowl game at all, and you're going to have those average teams that get beaten by all the big clubs.
Is one of those teams Auburn going 6-6?
Yeah, I got Auburn and I got Kentucky both going 6-6.
Wow. Rob, what do you have Auburn at?
Probably 6-6. Yeah, they got a tough schedule.
And then I've got Arkansas 5-7, Missouri 5-7, Vanderbilt 4-8. I think they're going to really fall off, and Mississippi State 4-8.
You have a couple of teams doing a lot better than I do. I'll go ahead and skip to this because there's not a whole lot to talk. Besides, I'm going to talk about Auburn in a second. I have Kentucky going 2-10 and Arkansas going 2-10. There is going to be a bottom feeder tier where these teams only win 2 games, they don't win a conference game, and both these teams are going 0-9 in my mind. I can see Kentucky winning a game, probably 3-9, but not any better than that. I don't see Arkansas winning a game this year in the SEC. I would probably put money on that too, to be honest.
It's hard to imagine them beating an SEC team this year.
Yeah.
But I
And
think they
Kentucky
would
lost their
destroy.
defense
They
and their
destroy
defensive coordinator.
Stanford. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
That's
then
what's crazy is if you put Kentucky or Arkansas up against almost any other conference team, middling team, they beat them by 3 touchdowns. So it's crazy.
I just want to say I don't believe in Kentucky. Again, they have had a good defense, but they lost 8 of their 10 tacklers and they lost their defensive coordinator. They picked up the Texas A&M defensive coordinator, so they're going to be one of those teams that's going to be good in a couple of years. They brought in Will Stein as their coach, the offensive coordinator at Oregon. So this team should be good in a couple of years. Auburn's going to be really good in a couple of years if they keep with what they're doing right now. Mississippi State is pretty underrated last year and should continue to be and should be good in a couple of years too. But all these teams, these teams have to lose to the better teams. And again, especially Kentucky with very little offensive power and not as good a defense as I'm used to, I don't know if they're going to win an SEC game.
Well, and these are the kind of teams, Robbie, that we talked about when you go to 9 conference games. It hurts these teams even more because Kentucky and Missouri and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, these are the bottom of the bottom, and they're looking up at all these great teams ahead of them. So you're right. There's just not a lot of wins on the schedule.
So who do you guys have? I have Georgia playing Alabama everybody's so sick of that matchup. I have Georgia playing Alabama in my SEC championship. Who do you guys have in your championship games?
Georgia, Texas.
Georgia, Texas.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And I have Georgia beating Alabama in mine. Who do you have winning that game? Your Georgia, Texas, excuse me.
I think Texas.
I got Georgia winning it again. I think they just have Texas's number.
I think Texas is going to be really tough because
As you guys
high scoring and they have good defense.
As you guys might have seen in our previous podcast, I've got Oregon and Georgia in the final all the way through the playoffs. So I've got Georgia and Oregon being the two best teams this year.
I also want one last thing I want to say is of the teams that we listed as kind of middle of the pack teams. So I'm going to say everybody under Texas A&M. That's going to, Missouri all the way down to Mississippi State. Which of these teams do you think is the most likely to sneak into an almost playoff spot?
What are the teams? We got Kentucky.
Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, Vanderbilt, and I'll throw in Mississippi State potentially as well.
I think
I'd say
Florida and Auburn
Florida.
for me. Florida and Auburn, those two teams have the best chance to be better than we expect. Auburn, because you talked about the quarterback they brought in this year, he can be pretty darn good. And then Florida, they've got a huge NIL budget in that grouping. They have the biggest, and they have a good coach. And I think that they're going to turn it around eventually. Florida's a football program.
I think Florida's gonna be a playoff team in the next 2 years, or maybe 2 to 3 years. I don't necessarily gonna call it for next season, but I like John Summerall a lot. They have so much NIL. They're always so talented, and now they have a capable coach in theory. I this team is 1, maybe 2 years away, but I feel very good about that.
I have them 7-5 this year, and then I agree with you. I think next year they'll make the playoff.
I'm hearing really good things in camps about how their offensive line is blowing their defense off the ball. And at first people were thinking, is it because the defense is weak? And then they did an analysis and the defensive line is looking good overall. It's just Florida's offensive line is going to be pretty spectacular as the season goes on, I think. I think it's going to amaze people.
They brought in Buster Faulkner as the offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. Obviously, he came over with Aaron Filer, the quarterback. And they keep Jaden Baugh, who was 1,100-yard running back. I feel like he was kind of under the radar. I didn't know they had a running back put up that many yards last year. And there's 7 transfers to the offensive line. This team is going to be stupid fun to watch run the ball, and that's what I'm hearing. What you're saying about their offensive line is just going to be able to overpower people. They're gonna run through you, and they're going to run through a couple teams in the SEC that they shouldn't beat.
I heard it described that the offensive line is making holes that a normal person could run through.
I like that.
That's huge good. Holes.
Let's go.
You guys have any other thoughts about the SEC as a whole this year?
I mean, great. I think the final is going to have an SEC team in it for sure.
Yep, I agree. I don't know if they're going to win it, but I think
I don't know if they're going to win it.
Finally get to the
final. A lot's going to depend on healthiness and things like that. But I think SEC's back up again. They're spending the NIL money and they're getting the transfers. They're doing what they need to do to be back. They're not going to be as dominant ever again because they're not the only ones spending the money.
I think Big Ten will definitely be there again 4 years in a row. And I think the only team that could stop the SEC from being the opponent is Notre Dame. And I think that I'm really excited to see how they look the first 3 or 4 weeks, because if they are significantly better than last year and if CJ Carr looks much more polished,
I think it's really hard to do.
They have a real chance to supplant the SEC team.
I think it's really hard to do what Notre Dame does, which is blow out all these bad teams and then go into the gauntlet and play Georgia or Texas or whatever and have to deal with being completely out of sync on offense because the other defense is so good. And it's got to be frustrating when you can't do your normal stuff, which is blow the other team out. And
true.
I think if you never play any good teams, you might always be in the big game, but you're not ready for it.
But they're so loaded this year. They have NFL receivers. They have NFL running backs. They've got Marcus Freeman's a great coach. I just think they're the one team that could stop the SEC from getting to the final.
I do agree that they're loaded, but it's tough. I just don't think their schedule prepares them for the big gauntlet at the end, the last 2 or 3 games of the season to hold up the Crystal Trophy. Like
they were in the final 2 years ago, so with Marcus Freeman.
I know.
All right, well, that's all I have for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll be back really soon with ACC and the other conference predictions coming up here as well. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.